Are you on? Oh, you couldn't get on your phone and unpin. You can't unpin the last week's pod, can you?
No, I don't think it was even pinned. I looked earlier today and it wasn't.
Oh, it wasn't? Okay.
Nah.
So you're puffing that does a live
1 minute till
to millions on Facebook.
They can't see that, mate. I got bloody
the stuff.
Got the stuff in front.
But they can probably hear us.
They can definitely hear now. "30 seconds till liftoff." Bloody paper keeps flying everywhere. Anyway. Three, two, one. Alright, let's do this. Alrighty, we're live, guys. G'day, welcome to the TryPod. For those that don't know, obviously we're going to be here every week or twice a week to break down the NRL action, and we do it a little bit differently. We look at the NRL from a betting perspective. We'll break down all 8 games for week 1 this week, all from a punting perspective, and we've got a few best bets sprinkled in there as well. Not sure what format you guys are used to, but essentially how we're going to roll for this year going forward is we're going to break down in depth the Thursday game, and we will give out our best bets on the Thursday game if we do have any for this week, and any other value plays or plays that we don't think may be there tomorrow. But all the other games, we will release those best bets around midday to 1 p.m. Tomorrow, and that'll be all in the TryPod app. So make sure you've downloaded that one and you'll get all our best bets. You'll get a push notification when we post those tomorrow in the early afternoon. Jacob, how are you, buddy?
Good, thanks, mate. Thank you to everyone who's tuning in to look at two faces that the bookies hate and that women hate across the country. And yeah, to reiterate, we deep dived the Thursday game today. We feel there's enough markets out and about, so we've been through that. And we do have a couple of best bets we'll share very soon. The rest of the games, we're going to discuss our first thoughts and whether we like a side or not, whether we agree. We don't know. We haven't discussed them in depth yet. And then any additional bets, we're going to be deep diving the markets, finding the very best prices and lines and totals tomorrow. And that's where it's released in the TryPod app. The hardest part of our job, I think, is just keeping this pod short. We have so many thoughts, but we're trying to break down the games, not your typical breakdown, but how you can win money on these games. So, yeah, let's get into it. We've got it absolutely cracking. Cannot wait for footy to begin tomorrow night.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And the first one we're going to go through is the Storm minus 3.5 points against the Broncos. Obviously, the Storm at home, 42.5 is the total. I guess I'll kick this one off quickly. Like we discussed earlier, and Jacob released his thoughts on his top 8, and he had the Storm at number 1. I disagreed, but I still do think that the Storm are a better team than the Broncos. You've still got those Broncos that are under the new coach Seabold. They're trying to play a more expansive style of footy. And although I did say that they're probably going to have some games in the early portion of the season where they do go over, I do also think that when you change styles that drastically from a defense-first kind of style to quick play the balls, spreading the ball early, I think that does take a little bit of time and that cohesion and chemistry to kind of kick in. In terms of the Storm home field advantage, it is one of the stronger home field advantages in the comp. I think last year we were giving them at least 3 points, if not 3.5 points for home field. So I look at this line and I think, the bookies think that this Storm and the Broncos team are even. I disagree. I think the Storm are probably a slightly better team, plus at home. I also think that in the very first round of the season, I think it's more of an advantage to be at home. You've been training on your pitch, on your field, all the off-season, and so have every other team. And they've gotten used to the feel of the pitch, the lighting, all that kind of stuff. And then you have to play one game at a different pitch. I think that's a complete disadvantage. So I like the Storm in this one. I think they get the job done.
Yeah, so a couple of global points. We broke down all 16 teams a week ago. So if you want to hear more of our thoughts on how each team's going to go this year, that was last week's pod. You can still find it, obviously, on this feed. And there's going to be, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but across the screen right now, we have the general line for the game.
Correct.
But we also have our best bets that we do have on this game showing right now.
Correct.
So don't get confused. We're saying Melbourne -3.5. We're going to show the line for every game. So that's not necessarily a best bet. That's just letting you guys know what the handicap is for reference. And obviously from bookie to bookie, that could vary by half a point. You guys will know if you follow us that we make sure we get the very best half point. But in this case, we do actually like the Storm -3.5. And as you said, I would say these teams, I'm expecting them to have similar seasons, but first game under Seabold, I don't expect the Broncos to be completely sharp. I think this game will be won in the play the ball battle. Brisbane wanting to play the ball as fast as possible, the Storm wanting to slow that down. So refereeing will be important. Last year, remember, it was a debacle with the number of penalties that were called early. I don't think they want to make it a penalty fest. Therefore, I think with home field as well and the crowd potentially putting a bit of pressure on the refs, I think the Storm will get away with a bit. They'll slow it down. For me, the biggest edge is the experience of the Storm pack. Now, Joe Stimson can't play in this game. I think he's got a back issue. I still look at that team. That forward pack is so experienced, obviously, with Cam Smith going around. The Broncos pack is excellent, but Tavita Pangai Jr. not 100% coming off the bench. Guys like Jack Bird and Gillette, they have not played footy for so long. They're going to need a few weeks to get better. And Broncos have a bit of speed on the outside backs, but so do the Storm. The Storm can negate that. I think the Storm are the better team. They win this by 4 or more.
Yep, I agree, and we've got two bets there showing on the screen. For obviously everyone that's watching now, you can see those. But for everyone that's listening in podcast form later on tonight, we will be taking as two best bets the Storm -3.5 points. The best price on that one is $1.91 on Unibet, and we're going to take the Storm straight up in the first half. That is $1.80 on BetEasy, and that's in a two-way market. So if it's tied at halftime, you do get your money back. Moving on to the first Friday game, we got the Knights at Pickham against the Sharks. 41.5 is the total. For you guys that are new to the pod, Pickham basically means that both sides are $1.90 to win or $1.91 or whatever, and you just have to pick the winner. I lean the Knights in this one. I also like the under, and I'll tell you why. Mainly is the weather report. It's meant to be raining throughout the week in Sydney and in and around Sydney, and there are thunderstorms scheduled for exactly when that game is going to happen. When there's thunderstorms, usually it does become a forward battle. You don't spread the ball as much. It becomes much safer, and it's just harder to score points in the wet. So I think whoever wins the forward battle is going to win this one. Like we mentioned in a previous pod last week, the Knights do actually now have quite a strong home field advantage, and I think they even have a stronger home field advantage at the start of the season when they're not quite out of the eight, out of contention for the 8. That stadium is going to be absolutely buzzing. And the Knights used to have a shitty forward pack, but you bring in Tim Glasby, you bring in Clemmer, and I think that in fact the Knights forward pack, you could argue, is better than the Sharkies forward pack. I would say that the rain kind of nullifies some of Sean Johnson's capabilities. I guess you could argue the same for Ponga, but especially Sean Johnson. I mean, he plays a lot better, in a dry pitch where he can spread the ball around and quick and that kind of thing. So I think in wet conditions, I kind of trust Mitchell Pearce a lot more for his in-game kicking ability, that kind of stuff. I really do think that the Knights lift here at Pickham. Strong home field advantage, and I also like the under. I think the 41.5 is too high, and once the weather report gets a bit closer to the day and people realise it's going to be pissing down, that total is going to come down.
Yeah, so one global point I wanted to make as well is that we may not have a best bet on every game. And, the bookies have a lot of things in their favour when they frame the markets. But one thing we have in our favour is we choose which games to bet on and which markets to bet on. And if we don't feel strongly enough, we're not going to make it a bet. You don't win 60% of your bets over 4 years, 3,000 bets by betting every game, every market. And I can kind of make a case for both teams. I just want to say this would be one of the games that I cannot wait for the most. This is going to be so exciting and highlighted by the number 6s in Ponga versus Sean Johnson, both kind of in new positions or in new teams. So that's going to be so exciting, and that will go a long way to decide who wins. You mentioned the home field advantage, and you mentioned that I shared my top 8, and I had the Knights 7th. I believe they will scrape into the 8 this year, and I have the Sharks just missing it. So you'd think then with the Knights being at home that I should love the Knights here, at Pickham. But week 1, you talked about the new forwards. You got Glasby, Gave, Clemmer. That's 3 new forwards in the middle. And I just worry about them, and their cohesion in week 1 with guys like Moylan and Sean Johnson in and around the ruck. They could make them pay. So in terms of the Sharks, I think although they've got Johnson, they've got more continuity. I feel they're more experienced. That's kind of favouring them in this matchup. But on the other hand, I just have to believe the Knights are more excited for this game and they're more excited for this season. And I expect just a massive, enthusiastic, energetic effort by the Knights. But I just can't quite get over the line with either team. I do lean to the Knights if I have to, but I feel execution could be the difference. Goal kicking could be interesting too. I think the Knights will rely on Ponga's goal kicking, and I don't think he's kicked over 70%. Sean Johnson a little bit better than that. So I don't have a firm play at all, slightly into the Knights in what should be a cracker.
Yeah, definitely. And your point on goal kickers as well is one of the reasons that I like the under as well, not only because of the weather. Let's move on to the second Friday game. We got the Roosters laying 4 points against the Rabbits. 37.5 is the total. The Roosters at home. I actually like the Rabbits here. I think I discussed this last week, how the Roosters, they know they're going to play finals footy. They're $4 to win the bloody premiership. They know they're going to be playing finals footy. Generally, when you get teams like that, sometimes they do ease their way into the season. We discussed this with, cellar dweller teams or teams that probably know that they're going to be on the cusp of the 8. It's very, very important for them to win those early games so they give themselves a chance to sneak into the 8. The Roosters know they're going to be playing finals footy. They can kind of ease into the season. They've had a long off-season. They played finals footy last year. They went all the way. They won the premiership. They travelled to England, played the World Club Challenge. They are going to be a bit more fatigued than other teams. Home field advantage is not as big with the Roosters playing against the Rabbits. We've discussed this as well. Generally, home field advantage is 2.5 points. When you get 2 Sydney teams playing each other, especially in a rivalry like this, I would only give the Roosters half a point.
And
or
this
maybe
is at the SCG, so it's not even an Allianz.
Fair call. Neutral venue. I didn't actually know that. Good call. So yeah, absolutely neutral venue. And I just think that the Rabbits, I want to bet on the Rabbits. I know that I said that the Rabbits will be down this year. I want to bet on the Rabbits before Greg Inglis's body, before Adam Reynolds' body starts breaking down in the long season. Now they're pretty much fully healthy. They're a solid team. And with a low total like 37.5 with rain expected, I'd take those 4 points.
Yeah, I also didn't put the Rabbits in my 8. It was a tough admission, but I do believe that they can match it with the Roosters. Look at the backlines. The Rabbitohs backline is still pretty decent. I believe Greg Inglis's home has to be at centre now, and I think it's the right choice to go with Johnston at fullback. I think that's going to serve them better long term, whether that's what they will use later in the season. I know GI wants to get back to fullback. And with the Roosters, their backline is slightly weakened from last year because you lose Fergo, and he was awesome for them, and Brett Morris's experience will do a job. In the forwards, of course, the edge is to the Roosters, and we're not arguing the Roosters aren't the better team. George Burgess is out for this one, and, you pretty much flipping Angus Crichton, who was on one side, has gone to the other,
True.
And the Rabbitohs haven't made any major additions to their team. So you have to give the personnel edge to the Roosters. But, yeah, other guys like Sam Burgess and Johnny Sutton also, I think they're going to play better earlier in the year when they're fresh. And I do really feel that there's still a couple spots up for grabs when Burgess comes back into this team, that the players are really going to play hard and try and prove themselves for Wayne. These two teams are bitter rivals and have a knack for playing a lot of close games. So catching around 4.5 points could be the way to look with the Rabbitohs. That's the side I'd be looking at for value.
Yep, sounds good. Sounds like we're both on the same side there. Moving on to the next one, over the ditch to Auckland. We've got the Warriors hosting the Bulldogs. Warriors are 4-point favourites. 38.5 is the total. I didn't have much on this one, to be honest. I know that the Warriors are the better team. I know that the Bulldogs I absolutely hate last year, and I hate them this year as well. They're probably going to win the wooden spoon. But the reasons that I would probably lean towards the Warriors is you saw what happened last season. New fitness coach, they came into the season. You could just tell they looked way fitter than every single other team. I don't see why that's going to change this year. They know that they're not going to be able to ease their way into finals footy like the Roosters, so they should really come out with a point to prove. But so should the Bulldogs, really. New coach and stuff. I really worry about not only the Warriors playmakers, but the Bulldogs as well. And I went into depth on that last year. But you've got Blake Green there, who I've always kind of said is very solid, but you need someone, awesome next to him. And that's what he had last year. You had a creative half in Sean Johnson. And we'll have to see about this Adam Kieran guy. if he's going to be any good or not. But I just worry about the Warriors' playmaking, and I worry about, how long that chemistry is going to take to gel there in the halves for the Warriors. But, I can see how people would like the Warriors in this one. It seems like a low line. Warriors, generally have a fairly good home field advantage, and the Bulldogs are absolute garbage. But on the flip side, the Bulldogs know that they have to put in for every single game, especially at the start of the season, if they're any hope of making the 8.
Oh, yeah, the Bulldogs are an effort side. I expect big effort. And, yeah, this game could be decided by 2 number 6s named Adam Kieran, who I've never seen play. So I'm very interested to see how he goes for the Warriors. They've chosen him over Chanel Harris, Tavita, I think it is. And then, of course, Kieran Foran. What are we getting out of him? He's starting here for the Bulldogs, and, he returns to Mount Smart. So they're going to need a big game from him. Papali'i out for the Warriors as well. That hurts a little bit. He's an important back rower in that team. The Dogs choose to go without Reece Martin. I don't know how he's fallen out of favour there, but they are deep in one position. It is back row. So I still would have thought they'd have him on the bench. But, it is still a strong side in the forwards, and I give the edge to the Bulldogs in the forwards. Yeah, but they do have Kerrod Holland for goal kicking. But I also give an edge to the Warriors outside backs, particularly that back 3. In Fusatua, Malmelo, and the Dally M medalist. No one played better than RTS last year. I think that helps negate the inferior forward pack, because those 3 get the set started so well. And my defining factor is what you already touched on. I think this team comes out fitter and more mobile and faster. And in round 1, I think that will be the difference and will allow them to cover the line here. So I do like the Warriors.
Yep, can't argue with you. And we didn't mention that Isaac Luke won't be playing this one either. Let's move on to the Tigers laying 2.5 points against Manly. 40.5 is the total. This one will be at Leichhardt. Obviously personnel in terms of Manly, you don't have Tommy Turbo, who's, obviously the best player on that Manly side. On the flip side for the Tigers, no Moses Mbai, no Nofaluma, and no Chris Lawrence either for the Tigers. So you don't get fully healthy teams here. Both teams that I'm actually down on this year, I said in last week's pod, I don't think the Tigers are going to have the season that they did last year. A lot of close wins. Their defense was absolutely great, but they just grinded out a lot of close wins last year and finished 9th. I don't think they're going to be able to do that this year. And like you said last week, Jacob, with aging guys like Benji and stuff in the team, they're going to be a year older, a year slower, all that kind of thing. So, but I struggled to wrap my head around this one. I can't really pick a side. I'm so down on both sides for this year, and Tigers probably do have, a 2.5 point home field advantage. I can't see the difference between these two teams. If anything, maybe I'd lean the under 40.5 with a chance of rain there, and the Tigers we know, had very, very good defense last year, and that should be fairly similar this year. And without Manly's best playmaker in Tommy Turbo, or most explosive player, I struggle to see where the points come from. So, I can see the Tigers grinding out a win here, but laying 2.5 points just is probably, too rich for my blood.
I do feel, they will have a strong home field at Leichhardt. I expect there'll be a lot of energy in that venue as well. I don't think you mentioned Josh Reynolds as well, left out of this team.
Yes.
And a guy like Benji has his spot, and you've got Farah starting at the 9, and I'm not expecting a lot from either of them this year, but they are also players who, if they're going to play well, it will be early, because the attrition of the season has not kind of set in. They're not worrying about their, recovery and their nagging injuries that take longer to heal, and they want to prove themselves too. There's plenty of doubters about those two, reunited at West. We have new coaches for both sides. And you're right, both sides depleted outside backs. That outside 5 backs for Manly looks pretty grim when you take away the best, player on that team. I don't see how that back line really comes up with many points. You look at the forward packs, and Marty Tapau and Jake Trbojevic, probably the best 2 forwards in this game. And yet I think the Tigers have the edge in the forwards, because I think the Tigers have more depth and more contributors across the whole pack and on the interchange bench. So I actually kind of trust, think Luke Brooks can take over this game. I think Benji can do well in round 1. There's also an issue with the spine, obviously, with Turbo out and his playmaking. So I do give a few edges to the Tigers, plus at home, I believe that they probably do cover the 2.5. That's the way I'm looking at this game.
Yeah, fuck, you're probably right, because, I mean, Kane Elgey, like we said last week, is probably a second-grade player, and he's in there in the half, so I really struggle to see how Manly puts on any
if
points.
Turbo was playing in this game, I mean, he's got to be worth a couple of points, so would this game be pick'em? I feel like the Tigers would have still been favourites, so...
Yeah, that's true.
Can't understate how valuable he is.
Yeah, no, that's a fair call. Moving on to Townsville game, we got the Cowboys laying 1.5 points at home to the Dragons. 41.5 is the total. I like the Cowboys here. It's no secret. I said that I really am high on the Cowboys this year. Not only because obviously they've gotten a little bit healthier and they've gotten some good recruits, but just from a betting perspective, they did so bad last year. Everyone's so down on the Cowboys, and now you lose Thurston. Everyone kind of thinks, oh, they're going to be shit again. And just the narrative is, Dragons do really well at the start of the season and then they kind of falter. So I know a lot of the public will be on the Dragons in this one. Cowboys have a really, really strong home field advantage. I would put that at about 3.5 points. So this line's telling me that the Dragons are 2 points better than the Cowboys. I don't think so. I know that this game is at night, Saturday night, but it's still going to be 28 degrees at 8 p.m. at night in Townsville. It's going to be muggy as fuck. Dragons are coming from a pretty coolish early 20s temperature. That is a difference going from, playing a game, your first game of the season, in the high 20s where it's really humid in Townsville. So I think that's a really good advantage for the Cowboys. And I think that the Cowboys can win the forward battle here. I know that everyone always says that, the Dragons have a good forward pack, and they do. But you look at the Cowboys forward pack, you've got Matt Scott, who was injured for a lot of last year. You've got Jordan McLean, injured for a lot of last year. You've got Colin Hess, an absolute monster. Taumalola, obviously, we know what he does every year. And you have Josh Maguire coming off the bench. That is a very, very good forward pack. I don't trust Corey Norman and Ben Hunt. I think that, Widdop at fullback is still an experiment. I think this Dragons team is going to take a while to get that into gear. I think Michael Morgan will thrive without JT there. We saw what he did a couple of years ago. I think he's going to take the reins there. I think he's going to take over the Cowboys, and he has the talent for it. I just think that last year, like we said last week, was just an anomaly because he was injured. I don't think it was because he was fucking playing terribly. It was because he was injured. He's going to be fine here. The Cowboys get the job done and cover the small spread.
And I mean, looking at that gleam on your forehead, I mean, you are sweating just in Brisbane weather. So imagine how, humid it's going to be up in Townsville. The thing about this Dragons team, hairline. I think that they have a lot of potential. When I look at the talent at 1, 6, 7, and 9 with Widdop, I think he'll play well at fullback. What Norman and Hunt can do, both former Broncos, and McInnes the way he played, but I don't think it's going to gel instantly. And there's also talk that they're going to bring Dufty in, they're going to swing Hunt to the 9, they're going to swing Widdop into the halves. I mean, you're going to change your spine mid-game. It seems strange to go in. Matching up the forward packs, both very good forward packs, but DeBellin is a big loss. He's been monstrous for this team last year and the year before when he was knocking on the door for Origin. So that's a big... They're also short Corbin Sims as well. And I agree, I love the Cowboys pack. If anything, if the weakness for the Cowboys, it's the back five with Kyle Felt also out, and they've chosen not to choose like Inari Tuala and even Benny Hampton hasn't been picked. So I haven't seen guys like Justin O'Neill, and I wasn't overly impressed with Opachik last year for the Broncos. Haven't seen great form out of them, but McDonald is a big addition. So I also lean to the Cowboys.
Self-conscious about my forehead. It's not even sweaty. Comments coming in, my forehead. Fucking keep looking at it now.
Panthers Eels.
Let's get on to Panthers Eels. Panthers hosting the Eels. Panthers laying 4.5 points against the Eels. 41.5 is the total. I looked at this line initially and I said, how the fuck are the Panthers laying 4.5 points to the Parramatta Eels, who are the second lowest odds or second highest odds to win the premiership this year? The Panthers have a decent home field advantage, but you're laying 4.5 points and you're playing another Sydney team. Like you said last week, no Viliami Kikau. That's a big loss for the Panthers. But Junior Paulo for the Eels probably won't play with a hammy strain, so that hurts their weak pack as well. So, if I look at this game in a vacuum, I know that the Panthers are much better than the Eels, and I would probably happily lay the 4.5 points at home. The issue I have is all this off-field drama. Now, I know we said last week this can go one of two ways. It can either distract the team, and that's all they've been thinking. They've got to answer media questions. Who knows how many other Panthers players have fucking weird sex tapes that they've done and are worried about this shit getting out into the public. I'm sure there's a few of them. And it's not an easy thing to go and play a footy game and have all these distractions hanging around you. When you play a footy game, that's all you want to worry about. I don't think the Panthers are only worrying about this footy game. I think there's a lot of other stuff going on, and it hinders your preparation as well. So, like I said, if I look at this in a vacuum, I would take the Panthers -4.5. But as bettors, you have to look at outside factors as well, and I really don't like the lead-up that the Panthers have had, in the lead-up to week one, that's for sure. So, it's just one of those games where there's too much unknown for me in terms of the Panthers' motivation, distractions, where their head's at, for me to confidently put my money on the Panthers. But it is the only side that I could look at.
Isn't it crazy? We have 8 games this week, and this is the highest line of any game at 4.5. It really speaks to the closeness in this competition and why we love this competition so much, because anyone can beat anyone on their day. And as you said, Eels are being tipped by many to get the wooden spoon, and Panthers are being tipped by many to be in the grand final, and yet there's less than a try between these teams, and I can understand why. Now, the Panthers' backline is epic, and you've got the Origin halves, and there's a big edge there for them, and if they start well, they definitely can roll this team. And,
True.
you listen to the interviews of the Panthers players, they know it's all about the start. They had so many slow starts and so many kind of leads. They spotted their opposition last year and still came back and won those games, but that's not sustainable. That's not how they want to play. Now, new coach Ivan Cleary, unknown about distractions, but I believe Cleary is going to be a positive influence on this team, and I think if he can bring kind of the defensive steel that he, installed at West Tigers to this Panthers team, then they can make a grand final. I think that they will start out, they'll want to start really fundamentally strong and not let the Eels have anything easy. And we've spoken a lot about the Panthers because we think that, if they turn it on, they can win by more than a try. So it's really up to them how they play. But let's take a look at the Eels. I think they know how much pressure is on them. I don't think they can come out and get flogged in this one. There's so many people under pressure. And Brad Arthur speaks a lot about desire. And if you look at this team, this Eels team, in their bad games last year, there was just no effort. And that starts with defense. You have to come out with and rip and tear and have defensive effort. And last year, the games when they did play harder was often when Nathan Brown was on the park. He is the leader of that forward pack for the Eels. Now, Paolo's a big loss. But I just believe the Eels have to come out. Even if they don't win, they have to put in a good effort, because if they come out and give less than 100%, then the Panthers could run them off the park. And then where do you go from there as an Eels team that already had, pretty shitty prospects for 2019? So I don't want to bet against Para when they're catching points, and you just have to believe they come out strong. Like, they've got their new stadium opening up in a few weeks. They want to make this season, competitive and positive. But
I really wanted a 6. I really wanted a 6 to play the Eels. But
yeah, so again, it's a case where we're not locking in a best bet now, but we can monitor the market and see if we find something that jumps out at us. But again, yeah, I think the Eels will give everything and could make it close for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to the final game, Titans are hosting the Raiders. Titans are -1.5 points, and the total is 45.5, the highest total of the week. Okay, so 2 teams that I'm actually quite high on this year. I'm high on the Titans, and I'm high on the Raiders as well. Not high on the Raiders, but I think they will have a much better season than they did last year. Tyrone Peachy comes in and he adds some creativeness, I guess, at centre there. It's just another guy. And so the weather reports come out. It said that there's meant to be rain on the Gold Coast during the game, hours before the game, and hours after the game. So it's probably going to rain. Now, if it does rain, I looked through the team list, a deep dive. We all know that the Raiders have, a very, very good forward pack historically. I actually think that the Titans forward pack can beat up on the Raiders in this one, if it rains, right? Because if it rains, usually it's the team with the better forward pack that wins out, just making more meters, getting better field position, etc. If it doesn't rain, I think that I trust the Titans halves a lot more than the Raiders halves. So either way, whatever the weather report comes out at, I really do think that, the Titans are going to get the better of them here. In terms of the total, 45.5, like I said, it's the highest total of the week. And we're expecting rain here. I think that total is too high. I think that once we get closer to game time and it's confirmed that it will be raining during game time, that total's going to drop closer towards 40, or at least down a couple of points. So, like you can see the best bets on the screen now, we are looking at a Raiders under, trying to anticipate, I guess, that move in not only the total, but also perhaps some sharp money coming for the Titans.
I can't help but think about round one last year. We had the same matchup, and it's so funny how things change in a year because we gave out a round one multi. I don't think we lost a tip in round one 2018, so pressure on.
We didn't.
And we won. We got every game right. It led into this game. I personally had been able to play that multi with a bonus bet, paying $15,000, and we got a great price on the Raiders just to win this game. And I went to the game with a friend who was in the members at the Titans. I thought, yeah, I'll go along. It was 18-0 to the Raiders after about 20 minutes. The Titans responded, but then the Raiders were up again 24-6. And I'm just sitting there thinking, man, the Titans are going to have a long year. This is such a mismatch. And then if people can recall what happened, it was just a slow, painful death for me, culminating in a Connie Hurrell try off a kick with a minute to go. And the Titans stole the game and killed our multi and cost me a lot of money. But plus 40 here, I will repeat myself from my preseason prediction, which is the Titans are my breakout team for 2019. I think they're going to go gangbusters. I talked about that last week. And I don't think they picked their best team for week one. I don't think Michael Gordon's the best answer at fullback. I'd rather have Brimson. Brenko Lee is there over Anthony Don. They haven't picked Dale Copley, really good defensive centre, Keegan Hipgrave, so they can improve. But I also agree, even though every single player in the Raiders forward pack is an international, I give the edge to the Titans forward pack. I really believe in them that much. And I also love the Titans halves. And a couple of good outside backs still. A guy like Philip Sammy is very underrated as well. He can finish a try. Tyrone Peachy, I don't think his best position is in the centres, but that's where they need him. That is their weakness. And he is, if he's engaged, he's a quality player. So I do give the edge to the Titans at home. And so I would also play the Titans as the best bet. And as you said, I think we're grabbing them $1.85. And if you play that on Sportsbet, you will win if they're just up 6 or more at half time. So if the reverse that happens to us a year ago, if we get an early lead, you'll cash. Now, for our best bets, we're not going to be claiming any promos or, we'd love to be able to get favourites at $2 and claim it as a best bet. But for us, a best bet is something that anybody can bet on and get at least $1.80, but we're averaging $1.90 odds on the win. So no promos involved, no funny business. So it doesn't matter what size you bet. You can follow our best bets all season long. We've shown what we can do with those.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if either of us mentioned, but Rapana will be out for the Raiders as well, which is obviously another big out. And like you mentioned,
he's out for 10 weeks.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, so like we're saying play this one on Sportsbet for the promo. But yeah, also like you mentioned, we don't count any of those promo wins in our record either. So, I mean, although that we, showed the graphic at the start that, if you just put $100 on every single one of our single bets, you'd be up over 38 grand. That doesn't include any of these promos either. So, some of the bets that, let's say, you bet on the Titans, they're up 4 at halftime, you cash your bet, but they go on to lose. That would count as a loss in our record, but that you would cash that ticket.
Or so, if you think last year we won 60% of our bets, but we had a couple of times we were on the Raiders and a lot of bookies were doing lead by 12 payout early.
Yep.
And that came in very handy for people following our tips. We still cop the L, but you could be winning even more than what our results are showing. So hopefully we can do that this week. I hope we kept the timing tight, but the best bets are all going to be out in the TryPod app tomorrow. And of course, join our group for all the broader discussion and information that we share there too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did see one comment floating in. Obviously, people were smashing the Raiders team total under 22.5 on Lads. They moved it to $1.63. It was the same price on Neds as well. So if you hop over to Neds, and that's why we kind of say, you got to have at least kind of 5 or 6 bookies in order to be able to grab every line that we give out. So Neds had the exact same price. So just flick over to there and grab that one before that price changes as well. But if you need to hook yourself up with any extra bookies, certainly hit us up on either the TryPod app, send us a message on there, or on our page. We're called TryPod, TryPod. You can find us on Facebook as well. But that'll do it, guys, for this week. I think I'm frozen anyway, but I hope that you guys can hear me. We'll be releasing the rest of our best bets after we deep dive fully. We'll come to an agreement. We'll chat for a few hours tomorrow. We'll come up with all our best bets, and we will release them in the TryPod app at around 1 p.m. tomorrow. So make sure you've downloaded the TryPod app. It's completely free to download. All our tips are free. All our content is free. and you'll get a push notification as soon as we release our bets in there. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll catch you on Sunday night at 6 p.m. on here. 6 p.m. Queensland time for a breakdown of round 1 of the NRL, and hopefully we've had another winning week. See you then, guys.
Can't wait, lads. Enjoy the footy.